Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be back with my Freedom from Religion Foundation friends. I'm Kate, as PJ said, last year's Free Thought heroine. Yes. And this year's person who's speaking right before Michelle Goldberg. I was invited last year, as PJ said, because of my book about why I decided to be honest about being an atheist, why I stopped pretending to believe, and why I think America needs more non-believers to do that. I was also invited because of my work as a columnist for the Washington Post. Not everything I write is about religion, but everything I write is about finding and examining the cultural assumptions underneath what's in the news, what's on screen, what's in my wedding vows, what my kids are learning in school. So what do we take for granted, in short, and what should we rethink? Since I saw you last year, I've kept at it. Same old angle, a little more self-consciously now, because although receiving the Free Thought Heroine Award was a great honor, it also felt a little bit like an assignment. I'm pretty sure that's because Annie Laurie had something to do with it. Well, I take my homework very seriously. And in the spirit of this annual meeting, and in the hopes of being invited back next year, I thought I should give a little annual report on my progress. So we'll just pretend this is a regular thing, okay? Here are some of the columns I've gotten to write since October. They're all on different topics, but they all ask readers to focus for a few minutes of their day on some part of our culture that bears, shall we say, re-examination. As you see, I asked readers to think about the National Day of Prayer and all the ways we've forsaken the one truly revolutionary idea the founders had, the separation of church and state. I asked readers to take a moment to consider the lives and the liberty that have been lost since Roe v. Wade was overturned, to notice that colleges are lowering their standards for male applicants in an attempt to even up the gender ratio, in effect practicing affirmative action for men. I've written about Louisiana's new law requiring that the 10 Commandments be posted in every classroom, and what other documents we could post that might be enlightening for students. I've pointed out that Christian nationalism and gun violence are tightly linked. I've talked about what a book ban means to the students, the teachers, and the librarians in my hometown, Virginia school district. I've asked whether the new weight loss drugs are going to pressure all of us to conform and therefore exacerbate anti-fat stigma and social inequality. I've also written about Barbie, the Bachelorette, beaches, and soup. Because even a free thought heroine gets to be free too sometimes, Annie Laurie. So that's what I've been doing this year, as well as getting to talk to amazing people all around the country about my book. But alas, as you well know, I'm not the only one who's been busy. Christian nationalists have too. So here are some highlights of the attempt to inflict one small group's religious beliefs on everyone else. 2024 edition. As I noted, Louisiana passed a law requiring every classroom in the state to post the 10 Commandments, along with other historical documents. Not to be outdone, Oklahoma said there has to be a Bible in every classroom, and schools have to teach from it. That's in public school classrooms, by the way. And yes, we still do have public schools, even though some states are trying to kill them off with voucher systems that funnel billions of dollars of public funds to private schools. And when I say private, I mean religious. The Washington Post just reported that 87% of school voucher dollars, 87% of these billions of taxpayer dollars, ultimately has gone to religious schools. But wait, we can top that, said Ohio, which passed a law allowing public tax dollars to go straight to building religious schools. No detouring through parents and pretending it's all about choice. Oklahoma would like to point out that just yesterday, its school superintendent included an additional $3 million in its budget to buy the Bibles that classrooms now have to stock. So there. They really do seem like they're trying to outdo each other. Not to be bested by Texas, Florida and Louisiana are now inviting chaplains into public schools. Unless the chaplains come from the Satanic Temple. And then, maybe not, no thank you. Meanwhile, there have been 13 measles outbreaks so far this year, which doesn't sound religious, but of course it is. It's a direct result of a concerted effort to allow religious exemptions to vaccinations. Technically, Project 2025 was written last year, but we have to pay attention to it now because the 900-page conservative policy playbook, which, to be clear, Donald Trump has never heard of and never seen, and also whatever it is, he doesn't like it. It's practically a Christian nationalist wish list. And as Catherine Stewart might say, they're telling us what they're going to do. We should listen. What they're going to do is, among other things, eliminate federal public funding, school funding entirely, allow religious foster care and adoption services to discriminate as they please, and require that workers be paid time and a half on the Sabbath. Speaking of the Republican nominee for president, he's now selling Bibles. Just $59.99. I think it would be cheaper just to take the one out of your bedside table if you're staying at, say, a Sheraton, which is owned by Marriott, which is supposed to put them in every room. I didn't find mine, but I guess it's possible that someone sold it for his legal fees. Anyway, like the Gideon Bible, the incursions of religion into our public life are everywhere. They're so common, I can't keep up. And I really admire people who do, including the FFRF legal team. Yes. To whom I have directed many concerned citizens over the past year. So sorry about that. And thank you. I expect we're going to hear plenty about Christian nationalism this weekend. But I want to start us out by pointing out one little footnote in the Christian nationalist story. Maybe it doesn't seem to have anything to do with religion, but like so much in our culture, it actually very much does. And what I'm talking about is the brief attempt to deal a political death blow to the Democratic nominee for vice president by dubbing him Tampon Tim. Let's give him a twirl, too. Yeah. So Tampon Tim, what's that all about? In 2023, Governor Tim Walz signed into law a budget provision requiring public schools to provide students from 4th grade and up with free menstrual products. Yep. I'll take that. The law took effect in January. No one cared. Lots of states do this. The idea is that menstrual care is basic hygiene and health care. It's like making toilet paper or Band-Aids, free and available to students. This small, compassionate requirement did not inspire the same outpouring of love that the free school lunch bill did. Fine. But why in the world would it inspire criticism? How does this law invite Republican scorn? Is it that awful to provide a necessity for free to needy kids? Well, maybe. But what they really didn't like was the fact that the law does not specify gender. It purposely does not specify gender. It says the products must be available to all menstruating students in restrooms regularly used by students in grades 4 to 12. This inclusive language, which allows for the possibility that a trans boy or a non-binary child might need menstrual products, which invites but does not require schools to stock those products in both the girls' and the boys' bathrooms, is what Donald Trump and his team were hoping to get voters riled up about. This inclusivity, this acknowledgement that trans and non-binary kids exist, enrages the Christian right. Perhaps it's better to say it's given them a concrete issue to try to get other people enraged about, because I'm not sure how much is genuine. It's hard for me to imagine that people care this much. But I do know that at the base of this insistence that boys are boys and girls are girls is religion. It's right there in Genesis if you want to go looking for it, which they definitely do. God created them male and female. That's it. That and an entire doctrinal hierarchy that makes women subservient to men and men subservient to God. A hierarchy that depends on a strict and immutable, God-given binary, Adam and Eve, male and female. I mean, that book was written a long time ago, and we make progress in our understanding of human biology, so maybe today, nope, never mind. In April, the Vatican's Department of Doctrine issued a 20-page document called Dignitas Infinita, or infinite dignity, to remind everyone that God created man and woman as biologically different, and changing one's gender is a grave threat to his law and to human dignity. And this is from the good Pope. Francis was a little late to the party. 10 years ago, the largest group of Protestant churches in this country, the Southern Baptist Convention, included this resolution in its annual meeting. And I know it's too much to read. I already cut tons of whereases and resolved. But I think you get the idea. Whereas God made two sexes, and whereas public schools aren't enforcing that division sufficiently, we are resolved to use our pulpits and the law to make life even more difficult than it already is for trans kids. Something like that. And that, my friends, is how you end up with legislation like the Millstone Act, sponsored by Oklahoma State Senator David Bullard, which makes it a felony to provide gender transition procedures to anyone under the age of 26. It's named for a Bible quote, Matthew 18:6. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it is better for him that a heavy millstone be hung around his neck and that he be drowned in the depths of the sea. The idea being that doctors who provide gender-affirming care should be drowned, metaphorically. The bill did not go through. But Oklahoma's bathroom bill did, among many others. Since 2014, when the Southern Baptist Convention made that resolution, the number of anti-trans bills introduced in state legislatures has skyrocketed from 21 in 10 years ago, 2014, to this year so far, 658. 45 of those are now law. These are not all just for show, just for bluster. These are happening. 16 states have passed 45 anti-trans laws, including laws that force students to use bathrooms that correlate to their birth sex, not their gender identity, laws that ban trans students from participating in school sports that match their gender, laws that ban gender-affirming care, and laws that out students to their parents. All this year. For that, we have God to thank, I guess. So by reminding us that Tim Walz made tampons and pads available to menstruating students, not just to girls, the Trump campaign is trying to remind us of how Democrats are subverting the divine order in a scary and even apocalyptic way. But there's something else that's going on with Tampon Tim. It's not just the coded reference to bathroom bills and Democrats' insufficient policing of gender and sacrilegious acceptance of trans kids. There's also the juvenile attempt to make us all giggle at the word tampon. I'm serious. Here in America, at least, tampons and menstrual pads are embarrassing. Menstruation is icky. It's shameful. Girls whisper to one another when they need to borrow one, if they can overcome their embarrassment enough to ask. And overcoming embarrassment is not typically a talent of your average adolescent. That's one reason why Walz had to sign a bill making schools provide menstrual products in the first place, so kids could just find them in the bathrooms. They wouldn't have to ask for them from their friends or their teachers or even their parents. And God forbid any man would have to go buy one. It is a cliche in pop culture, the terrified husband or the dad being sent to the grocery store to get feminine hygiene products. Has anyone ever seen a sign in a pharmacy that has the word menstrual in it? No. Feminine hygiene products. Here we have Michael Keaton in Mr. Mom trying to act casual, buying Kotex for his wife, and then, horrors, the cashier calls for a price check. Irv, are these Kotex maxi pads on special? Comedy gold. This embarrassment, this yuck factor, and all the yucks that it creates, about something that happens every month to half the population for half of our lives, where does that come from? Did you guess? Religion? According to the Old Testament and the Quran, menstruating women are unclean and impure. There are elaborate rules for what they can and cannot touch while they are menstruating, where they can and cannot go, and what they have to do to become clean again at the end of their cycle to return to full participation in their communities. This is true in the Hindu religion as well. Hindus cannot, for example, enter temples when they are menstruating. These are current signs. These are from today. In some places, they are banished from the home. They are barred from touching food, religious icons, cattle, and men. I didn't make the rules. So that's awful, but it's religion, right? I mean, if you're not an Orthodox Jew or a conservative Muslim or Hindu, if you don't care what St. Thomas Aquinas thought about menstruation, who cares? We don't have to abide by these rules. So why should it matter to us? Well, these things have a way of trickling down, so to speak. Even when those specific rules aren't followed, the general sense of menstruation as a state not just of impurity, but of something apart from and toxic to normal daily life, something we need to hide and look away from, has seeped into even the most secular cultures above and beyond just your garden variety misogyny. I learned from an early age not to talk about my period. If I had to take a tampon to a public bathroom, I learned to be discreet about it. Does anyone else know how to palm a tampon? We used euphemisms instead of the word period. We would talk about being that time of the month. We've all heard Aunt Flo's in town, right? Monthly visitor. There's also, I read, Satan's waterfall, which I think is perfect. In France, apparently, they say, the English have landed. In Australia, they call it Shark Week. Russians call menstruation defrosting the steak, or the Red Army. And apparently the Danes say, there are communists in the summer house. There are communists in the summer house. That's my gift to you today. So euphemisms are just one symptom of societal discomfort around menstruation. Here's another. If you bought a box of tampons today and you didn't know how to use it, you would be confronted by line drawings that are so squeamish about the female anatomy, they are functionally useless. Here on the left, you see it's pretty clear how to unwrap a tampon, I guess. But then we're absolutely not allowed to see where a tampon goes. Why would you show it to us from the side? They would rather cut off a woman's left leg than show us, I don't know, labia. You know what would be helpful to see? Would be like urethra, vaginal opening, anus. That would be useful information. This one looks like the tampon is going in through some kind of portal on her right hip. These are current, people. And on the right, okay, this is probably my favorite. I'm thinking, I'm a 12-year-old girl. I just got my period, and what I really need to see is the relative location of my colon and my coccyx. I don't even know what the blobs are. Is that the bladder? I feel like they're just here to distract me. Like, whatever you do, don't think about the vulva. All right, so our culture is so afraid of and grossed out by female bodies that we can't even show females the basic landscape. All right, this one isn't as terrible. This is from the Playtex box. It has less extraneous information, but it still kind of looks like the tampon goes in through the hip bone. Can you imagine if we showed people how to brush their teeth using a profile line drawing that showed like the tonsils and the jawbone, but not like the place where you insert the toothbrush? No lips or tongue. But wait, I had a friend do it for me. There you go. It's comical, but the ignorance and misogyny that tampon packaging represents is not really so very funny. The fact is that medical research having anything to do with the female body is woefully underfunded, that doctors routinely underestimate and discount female pain when it's reported to them, and that the quality or even existence of education about menstrual and sexual health in the schools depends very much on how enlightened your state government is, which in some states is not very. 2023 expansion of Florida's Don't Say Gay law prohibited sex education of any kind before 6th grade, which is, of course, after many girls have gotten their periods. Meanwhile, it should come as no surprise to you that menstrual products themselves are under-tested and under-studied. But you may be surprised how badly. The first disposable menstrual pads were sold in the 1880s. The tampon was patented in 1931. And the first published scientific study of menstrual products using actual blood, not water, was last year. They tested them, when they tested them at all, with a substance that I'm told is not as thick as blood. And so the issue with not knowing how much menstrual products hold is that how much you bleed or don't bleed can be a symptom of problems. But, you know, female problems. So I guess that doesn't really matter. All right, I think I need to see this guy again. Yeah. The good news is, Tampon Tim, didn't really take as a put down. It didn't really take. People didn't care. The good news is there are plenty of people who look at Tim Walz and see someone trying to help kids, all kids, and who see his association with tampons as a badge of honor. I wish I had done that. There are people who are grossed out not by tampons, but by the sniggering, childish bullies who are trying to play on our prejudices. The bad news is these prejudices run deep. Menstrual stigma is just one small symptom of the sexism enshrined in and forced by the world's major religions. And a progress report on that would take all day. And this year, it would have to begin with pro-life absolutism that saves the lives of 2-inch fetuses, but kills actual living women with actual futures and families. Our immediate, urgent job is to fight for them. But as we mobilize to get right-wing religion out of our laws, we have to stay alert to the fear and control of female bodies that religion has embedded throughout our culture. From discriminatory school dress codes to the sorry state of women's medical research to misleading sex education to the assumption that women's bodies can be used for unpaid domestic labor, elder care, and child care, as God and J.D. Vance intended. We've got laws to repeal, but we've also got an entire culture to shift. Listen, if you've read my book, and you should really read my book, you know that although I'm an atheist, I don't hate religion. I appreciate Renaissance paintings and cathedral cloisters and matzo ball soup. I appreciate the organization that goes into organized religion. I understand that people look to religion for a lot of the things that human beings need: meaning and morality and a way to think about death, ways to mark time and celebrate life. We've got to respect that, if only so we can think clearly about how to replace it. But as we try to live thoughtful, intentional lives, we also need to remember that religion has given us a lot of crap that we're so used to, we barely notice it anymore. Like the transphobia and the misogyny behind Tampon Tim. You'll find it everywhere. You just have to follow the thread. Thank you. You're sweet.